Good afternoon. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish back with you for our Tuesday edition of the show, creeping closer to the Super Bowl. But our coverage continues all day long right here at SportsGrid. We are live all over the place at MGM, Mandalay Bay. Make sure you stay live with us here on SportsGrid all day and into the night as well. We got a great show planned for you. Coming up a little bit later in the program, we talk some NBA. The trade deadline is coming up this week. We've got Gilbert McGregor in the house for the very latest. In addition, Brady Kannon will join us on the show, and we'll go over the very latest props, odds for the Super Bowl. Also talk about the big golf tournament going on this weekend as well. Can they actually finish a golf tournament on the PGA Tour? Kind of a crazy start to their season. Guest contributor from Legal Sports Report, and the very latest in news and notes from sports, wagering, and business as well. And that's where we're going to begin on the show today. As DraftKings, interestingly enough, for those of you who are using that app and legal sports betting around the country, they are suing a former executive for stealing some commercially sensitive documents. A gentleman by the name of Michael Hermalin, who was recently hired as the president of Fanatics, aimed at high-volume bettors and, quote, stole many of DraftKings' most commercially sensitive documents. He held the same role at DraftKings previously. An interesting story just came out about an hour ago. Naturally, we'll cover it with our friends over at Legal Sports Report, and any updates as to the legitimacy of this and what the accusations are, and certainly what this could mean in the future for Fanatics/DraftKings, we will tell you as well. But there's even a bigger story in the great landscape of sports as well, which are surrounding this new world of NILs. How about this? The National Labor Relations Board has ruled that Dartmouth men's basketball players are employees of the university. This is a first. Now, the school can still appeal, but this does clear the way for an election that would create the first ever labor union for NCAA athletes, something we have not seen before. But naturally, when money is involved and name and likeness benefits are involved as well, the average person who's ruling on this sort of thing will say, hey, look, if they're getting paid, they are actually employees. Will a union be formed? Still in a wait-to-see decision there, but two big stories surrounding finances. Not necessarily this one with sports wagering, but could obviously affect that as well, because some of these kids could potentially get NIL deals with sports books as well. Okay, so that's the very latest. How many people are going to be betting on the Super Bowl on Sunday? Raise your hand, right? Everybody watching the show here on NewsWire. Well, Americans are expected to bet, how about this, $23.1 billion on the Super Bowl. Our producer today, Michael Cohen, wanted to include that 0.1 as if it was really necessary. Michael, we could have probably just said 23 billion, but it's fine, and we want to be exact here on the show. The Eagles will kick off the 2024 season in Brazil, a Friday night. NFL starts. The NFL is going to play Thursday night, Friday night, and there's going to be a Saturday night game before we know it. Usually they reserve those games Friday night for high school football, right? Nothing is sacred anymore. So there you go. They're going to be playing in Brazil Friday night. Dan Quinn has confirmed Eric Bieniemy is out. He will not be back with the Commander's staff as offensive coordinator. Cliff Kingsbury, of course, is now with their staff. And how about this? A story for the past. Le'Veon Bell, remember him? The NFL running back who held out, probably shouldn't have, wasn't the same when he came back, left, boxed, if I'm not mistaken. Did he do some amateur boxing? Did he knock out Adrian Peterson? Am I right about that? I'm pretty sure he did. Thank you, Michael. Hasn't played since 2021. He's 32 years old. He wants to come back and play in the NFL. He's not. Sorry. All right, let's go to coaching hires. The Seattle Seahawks are expected to hire Jay Harbaugh as their special teams coordinator. He's 34 years old. He served in that role the past 5 seasons at Michigan under his father, Jim Harbaugh. So could we get a father and son coaching like the Shulas? You remember that when Don Shula coached against his son? David Shula with the Bengals. Anybody remember? UConn remains the #1 team for 4 straight weeks in the college basketball poll. South Carolina in the AP poll for the first time since 2017. UConn 1, Purdue 2, North Carolina 3, Kansas 4. Also last night, Kansas is going to lose that 4 ranking. They were upset by Kansas State in overtime, 75-70. And quarterback Bear Bachmeier commits to Stanford, officially their #6 dual-threat quarterback in the class of 2025. In the National Basketball Association, Joel Embiid officially undergoes surgery today on that left meniscus that has been bothering him. He'll be evaluated in approximately 4 weeks. So his NBA MVP campaign officially looks like it ended today. The Cavaliers are on a 6-game winning streak, 14-1 in their last 15 games. They beat the Kings last night by a final of 136-110. For those of you getting ready to watch the NBA All-Star game, they're going to play on these brand new courts. It's going to look a little bit different here. It's an LED glass court for all the events, state-of-the-art event that will be installed at Lucas Oil Stadium. Slam dunk competition, skills competition, three-point contest, all of that. That will obviously take place on the glass floor. The All-Star game itself, though, is going to stay on the wooden floor. So this is just for the skills, not for the game itself. Lakers center Jared Vanderbilt, he is out 3 to 4 weeks due to a foot injury. 24 years old, just signed a 4-year, $48 million contract with the Los Angeles Lakers. Okay, big money being thrown around by the Kansas City Royals. Not something that we say very often. They agreed to a 11-year, $288 million contract extension, and that includes just $2 million for this year, $7 million for 2025, but the back end of this contract from 29 to 34 is $35 million a season, and the last 4 years are player options as well. So the Royals spending big to keep Bobby Witt Jr., who was one of baseball's best players in the second half last season. Go take a look if you don't believe me. Ryan Brazier signs a 2-year, $9 million contract with the Los Angeles Dodgers. He signed a minor league contract with them last year, gets a major league contract for the next 2 years. Xander and Victor Hovland, they withdraw from the Phoenix Open coming up this week. Generally speaking, one of the fun tournament stops with everybody yelling and screaming. We'll get to Brady Kannon about that as well. And the Calgary Flames, Flyers, and New Jersey Devils are going to receive some salary cap relief. They have a lot of players facing sexual assault charges stemming from a 2018 incident in London. So essentially with these players being out, they can replace those players and not be hit by the salary cap. And that's what I got for you at the start of the show. But I got a lot more to get to here on the program, which would include, coming up next, we'll talk some NBA with Gilbert McGregor with the trade deadline coming up on Thursday. Will this be active? Will it be slow? No one really knows for sure. But to get the very latest news, notes, and information from all of our coverage here at SportsGrid, which includes our cruise out in Las Vegas. If those of you who are watching or streaming online, check out the SportsGrid app. I'm going to show you a QR code. All you got to do is put your phone up against that screen, download it, get it all set, put it on your phone, and you will be set with us, whether you have an iOS phone or Android. It is the SportsGrid app. It is available right now to download it. And by the way, it is absolutely 100% free. So let's do this. Let's take our first time out here on the show. Gilbert is going to come on next. We'll talk about whether or not Joel Embiid will even return at any point this season, because that's got to be somewhat in question. And are the Cleveland Cavaliers one of the teams to beat now in the East, in the NBA? We'll try to get some answers for you coming up next and see which trades could be on the line coming up Thursday. This is NewsWire on SportsGrid, and we'll be back right after this.
Tyreek, the first meeting, still had 5 catches, and Amon-Ra St. Brown still went through his number receptions-wise as well. Ayuk is now checking into a bit of the due category here.
We're talking about a field goal or less. The last time we saw a number greater than 5 was way back in February of 2008. It was that Super Bowl between the Steelers and the Cardinals, Super Bowl 43.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Don't want any distractions. And Vinny, on the eve of these teams getting to Las Vegas, we got a distraction.
We know that there's some family issues, not only with his dad there, but his brother has had a lot of run-ins here that have not looked good for the quarterback. But again, he's a different guy. I think we've understood that.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that they're going to try to run Pacheco down San Francisco's throat, as much as McCaffrey's going to get the ball for San Francisco, I think both of them will play well.
I think if the Niners win this game, Scotty, I think McCaffrey is the guy. I think he has a monster game for the Niners to win that. I think it's going to have his fingerprints all over it if it does happen.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman Trophy,
The early line,
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
NewsWire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell
backup quarterbacks.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
I have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what game
In-game live. Prime time.
Yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid
You
information. Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Big week in the NBA, probably bigger than anything that happens on the court. We love talking about trades and free agency, and let's bring Gilbert McGregor in for all of the drama that could be there. But Gilbert, we really don't know, right? Like every trade deadline in some of the other sports, I think it's a little bit more predictable than it is in the NBA. Like in baseball, we get there, we kind of know the guys who are going to get traded, free agents. The NBA, it just like either comes on fast and it just happens, like Durant goes somewhere else or Harden, or it just like nothing happens. And I wonder from your perspective, which way you think this one's going to go.
It's interesting. I do have a feeling that this is going to be an active trade deadline. There have been some rumblings that suggest that teams like the Lakers and Knicks and the Thunder could be active buyers, while teams like, the Bulls and the Hornets could be sellers at the deadline. But like you said, it seems like it could be quiet, and all of a sudden a star player requests a trade, and then in less than 12 hours, a trade is done. We learned that last year with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So I'm expecting things to kind of heat up. We're about 48 hours away from the trade deadline. And because there are a number of teams that are maybe one or two moves away from moving up in the standings in their respective conferences, I think we'll see some activity.
All right, let's get back to that at the end. I kind of jumped the gun on that, so to speak, here. Let's get to what's happening now, then we'll get to Thursday, because I do want to ask you about some players on Memphis, potentially, because that's at least a rumor. Okay, so Joel Embiid, let's start there. So I find all of this now a lot more fascinating, Gilbert, because he actually is hurt, And so the idea of the MVP playing 65 games, minimum, with 20 minutes apiece in those games, was really made for players who were getting this rest and not made for situations like this. So it's almost as if I see both sides to it. And, from the Sixers' perspective, this really puts them up against it because, honestly, left meniscus, they say 4 weeks. Gilbert, you and I know. I mean, this could be the season. It could go into April, May. We really don't know. But let's go back to the MVP discussion, and then let's get into Embiid and the Sixers. Do you think that there is now more middle ground that needs to be set for this? Or will Adam Silver go, you know what? This is an outlier situation. He's really is hurt. We're keeping it the way it is. Because, rules are made to be adjusted. What are your thoughts on that?
I certainly hope that they can be fluid with the rules moving forward. From what we've heard so far, it seems like they're going to stick with the rules that they have as far as the hard and fast rule of players needing to play 65 games and at least 20 minutes in those games to be considered for end-of-season awards, which also includes the All-NBA teams. I know when we look at Joel Embiid, who was definitely putting forth an MVP caliber season, scored 70 points in the game and was the reigning MVP, there was that concern that he was pressing a little bit to stay in consideration from those awards. I think that what I hope, at least moving forward, is that there's a little more nuance taken, with case-by-case basis of why guys missed games. Was it for rest? Was it preventative measures? Because obviously when you talk about these MVP caliber players, the game is better when they're on the floor. So you want a guy to maybe play 62, 61 games if it means that they're available in the playoffs. And now we're seeing the downside of that. Joel Embiid pressed a little bit. I don't know if this injury had to do with him pressing a little bit, but we know if he wasn't on the floor, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. Their odds to win the championship now take a huge hit. I mean, 42-1, Gilbert. I mean, this sort of tells you what that injury could mean. 23-1 to win the Eastern Conference. I guess we could play the other side of that, though, and say, maybe this is the buy time on that, like truthfully, you never want to, buy a team at their best. You want to buy a team at their worst. And this is obviously the Sixers at their worst. They're going to make the playoffs. Maxi's going to score more points. I mean, those things are all going to happen. But, even when Embiid comes back, if we're looking at this correctly here, essentially missing all of February, now we're going into March. I mean, back-to-backs are going to be out of the question. That's not going to happen. And so it's all playoffs or nothing, right? At this point for Philadelphia, just kind of get in and then fight their way in.
Absolutely. And Craig, like you said, it all has to do with the big fella and how he can play. You think about him, this is his 8th season on the floor, 10 years since being drafted, but this is his 3rd meniscus injury. It cut his rookie season short. He dealt with a meniscus injury in his other knee in 2021, and now he's dealing with one in his left knee again. That 4-week timeline for reevaluation tells me a lot about the type of meniscus repair that he has done. The partial meniscectomy is usually what gets guys back on the floor in 4 to 6 weeks. So he'll be probably back on the floor. They're thinking playoffs, but how effective can he be coming back from this? It's been done before, but it's not going to be easy, especially picking up the level of play that he had. That being said, the level of play that he was playing at was extremely difficult for opposing teams to deal with. So if he can get back to 80 to 85% of the player that he was, they have a chance in the Eastern Conference that the door is slightly still open. So there could be some value there for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But the team right now that everybody is in on is Cleveland because they're, as hot as, I guess the Knicks are the hottest team over the last month, but Cleveland's, kind of right there. To win the East, I don't know that I've ever seen these short odds on the Cavs, Gilbert, 9-1 to win the Eastern Conference. Like, wow, that tells you that there's a legit shot to do it. 20-1 to win the NBA championship. I mean, Cleveland without LeBron James winning the NBA championship? Tell me more here.
Credit to the Cavaliers. This is a team that had a lot of expectations coming into the season, and I thought they might have been a little too lofty. They dealt with injuries. Darius Garland missed time. Evan Mobley missed significant time. But now everything's coming together at the right time for this Cavaliers team. And Donovan Mitchell is playing really, really good basketball. I'm still a little concerned about this Cavaliers team just based on how they lost to the Knicks in the playoffs last year. They addressed some of those needs. They added George Niang in the offseason. They added Max Strus in the offseason. And they also have a few trade chips that they could use at the deadline this week. But the Cavaliers have the tools. They can put it together and get a good matchup. I think they can make some noise in the playoffs.
All right, so tonight we got Bucks-Suns, and this is probably the marquee game of the night. Rematch of the championship, of course, from a couple of years ago. In the NBA, you're a slight favorite at home. If that's the case, it means the game is even, and that's the case tonight. Suns -3.5 against the Bucks. 243.5 is the total tonight. Do you like any position, Gilbert, in this game tonight, or is it just one of those too close to call games? What do you think?
It feels pretty close to call when I look at everything. That under is really enticing. This is a Bucks team. It's the final game of a 7-game road trip for them. Final game of a 5-game road trip for the Bucks, and the Suns are back home after a 7-game road trip. So I feel like there's going to be some fatigue involved. Damian Lillard is questionable with an ankle injury he suffered, and the Bucks are struggling. They're 1-3 on this current road trip, and things are going to get worse for them before they get better under a new head coach. So I think that some fatigue is going to have a hand in that one, and it might be a bit of a rock fight between these two teams.
All right, let's go to trade deadline real quick. Memphis, without Ja Morant, they're playing for next year. There's no question. They've got a bunch of guys out. Very few players available. Are there talented players that Memphis will move to kind of reset things for next year, Gilbert? Would they be heavily involved, you think, Thursday?
I could see them getting involved. I know there's going to be a lot of interest in Marcus Smart, who's currently out with an injury. Another name to watch is not necessarily a big name, but Xavier Tillman is a guy who's on a rookie scale contract, has some size and is a really good interior presence. So I could see him kind of being a player that moves the needle in a deal. Otherwise, I'm not sure what the Grizzlies are going to do. We know that John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. are safe. So for the right deal, I think they could part ways with anybody else as long as they have the future in mind.
Yep, I definitely agree with you, Gilbert. It's great to see you. Thanks for coming on the show. Look forward to catching the Super Bowl Sunday. Did you have a pick on this, Gilbert? I'm trying to ask everybody before the end of the week to get a position on the Super Bowl. You like anyone?
I've learned in my time following the games to not go against Patrick Mahomes. So if I have to pick, I'm going Kansas City.
All right. You don't have to pick Gilbert. I'm just asking your opinion. But anyway, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. We'll catch up again next week.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, Gilbert McGregor, Sporting News. Coming up next, it's time for us to check in on the latest on sports betting and the business of it. We got Jim Gazzale coming up. We're going to talk a little bit about the launch in North Carolina, some updates in New York, and also an update on the Bet365 app, which is launched in Indiana as well. So more to come here on NewsWire as we return right after this.
Tyreek, the first meeting, still had 5 catches, and Amon-Ra St. Brown still went through his number receptions-wise as well. Ayuk is now checking into a bit of the do category here.
We're talking about a field goal or less. The last time we saw a number greater than 5 was way back in February of 2008. It was that Super Bowl between the Steelers and the Cardinals, Super Bowl 43.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Don't want any distractions. And Vinny, on the eve of these teams getting to Las Vegas, we got a distraction.
We know that there's some family issues, not only with his dad there, but his brother has had a lot of run-ins here that have not looked good for the quarterback. But again, he's a different guy. I think we've understood that.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that they're going to try to run Pacheco down San Francisco's throat, as much as McCaffrey's going to get the ball for San Francisco, I think both of them will play well.
I think if the Niners win this game, Scotty, I think McCaffrey is the guy. I think he has a monster game for the Niners to win that. I think it's going to have his fingerprints all over it if it does happen.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman
The
Trophy
early line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
NewsWire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell
backup quarterbacks.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
I have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime time.
yard for a grand slam.
In the bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid.
We
for
did.
information, didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We're happy to have Jim Gazzale back in the house talking sports betting. We got some news. Bet365 is like making this very big push. It feels like no one's talking about it, and Jim and I are going to discuss that as well as an upcoming launch in North Carolina. Jim, great to have you back here on NewsWire. Hope your week is off to a good start.
Thanks, Craig. We're talking about Bet365. We might be the only two, but we're certainly talking about it.
I mean, I don't know why. I think they're like maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm the crazy one thinking they're a sleeping giant. But anyway, I mean, what they do overseas and in other countries. Anyway, all right. Let's start out. Let's go in order here because my producer is going to get upset. Let's start with North Carolina. We got their sports betting coming up, launching soon. I know you spoke with the PGA Tour, and arguably the most popular. I don't know. Maybe it's not fair. One of the most popular states to bet on NASCAR is going to be in North Carolina, Jim. There's no question about that. A lot of the races are there, and a lot of the drivers live there. So you had conversations with representatives from PGA Tour and NASCAR. What'd you learn?
Yeah, so you're right. NASCAR is very excited about this North Carolina market opening up on March 11th. And when you think about North Carolina, naturally, we all sort of gravitate towards college basketball. But the PGA Tour and NASCAR have made some pretty solid inroads into North Carolina, and they're both banking on this newly legalized market when it launches next month to be one of their more popular markets for both golf betting and NASCAR betting. And when I spoke to the PGA Tour yesterday, they said that they're hoping to use North Carolina as a way to capture a younger audience. As we know, Craig, the sports betting audience tends to skew a bit younger, whereas the golf fan, the golf audience, the PGA Tour was telling me yesterday, tends to be a bit older. No real surprise there. So they're hoping that this new legalized market in North Carolina, which is very popular for golf, they do have 2 PGA Tour events there annually. They're hoping that this captures a younger audience, especially through their live betting, in-round betting, if you will, for golf. On the other side, NASCAR, again, plenty of NASCAR staff and employees based in North Carolina. This is going to be a very big market for them. And one interesting thing that they told me about the NASCAR betting fan is they have a tight-knit community where people who bet on NASCAR are rooting for other people that bet on NASCAR. They all seemingly want each other to win. And, you know, as we all know probably fairly well, and maybe all too well, Craig, the sports betting Twitter can be a bit adversarial at times. And the NASCAR executives were telling me that tends to be the opposite with NASCAR. Everybody seems to be rooting for each other to win. So, like I said, that market is opening up in March, right ahead of March Madness, a college basketball crazy state, but also a golf and NASCAR crazy state. And both the PGA Tour and NASCAR have high hopes for North Carolina when it launches next month.
Enough, and I love the analysis there because I think it is spot on. I'm very curious to see how the South responds. It's where, you know, NASCAR and of course Daytona 500, by the way, is coming up real soon, right after the Super Bowl. All right, let's get to the update here in New York sports betting leading up to the Super Bowl. Where, you know, obviously, you know, big numbers as you can see there on social media being posted out by Mike Mazzio. You know, Jim, it's look, a lot of conversation yesterday with Roger Goodell too, making his. It's just. The sports betting is booming like we've never seen before. There's just no stopping this. It's only a question of the companies that are trying to get their footprint and staying involved. But clearly, great signs again for the state of New York.
Yeah, and they're doing it exceptionally well. Though it does seem like January they're going to come up just a tad bit short of $2 billion in handle, which, you know, would have been the 4th consecutive month that they did that, but it looks like they're going to come up just a tiny bit shy of $2 billion in handle in January when we get those final numbers towards the end of the week here. FanDuel kind of stuck out to me over the first 4 full weeks of January, they were approaching $100 million in monthly revenue. All the apps really fared quite well in January. Of course, NFL betting with the playoffs going on is the big driver of that. It seemed like the online sports books in New York had everything kind of break their way in the AFC and NFC championship games, and they were able to clear nearly $44.5 million combined in just that 1 week alone. Now, of course, that's not just from NFL betting. That covers all of it. But, as we know, Craig, the NFL, especially this time of year, is a big driver of that handle and in turn the revenue for sports books. Overall betting handle in that final full week of January was $422 million. Like I said, just kind of parsing that out over those last remaining days of January to get to January 31st, which we'll see those results here in the next couple of days. Just kind of bearing out that $422 million figure. Like I said, it's going to come up just a tiny bit short of 4 consecutive months of $2 billion in online handle in New York State. We'll see what that all kind of bears out here. Those numbers usually come on Thursday. But yeah, like you said, it's been a huge market, probably the most robust market over the last 2 years since sports betting launched online in New York. And, certainly I'm sure all the operators in New York are excited about the approaching Super Bowl as they typically tend to do big business.
Yes, and certainly March Madness, very big also. I mean, let's not forget Big East, college basketball. Don't think of New York just as a pro state, college as well. Okay, so Bet365 is our next topic, as I teased at the beginning of the segment. A company that has just been huge outside of the United States, with sports betting being legalized outside of the United States for a long period of time. Quietly but effectively, Bet365 has jumped into different places, including Indiana recently, now heading into Arizona. So, Jim, in your opinion, what can Bet365 do to capture users, to capture sports bets like they do outside of the United States, knowing that they're having to fight with, the FanDuels, the DraftKings, the BetMGMs?
Yeah, I think what we're most likely going to see is a decent sized promotional spend. And the unique thing about Arizona is that the state regulators there do share that promotional spending each month for the operators. So we'll get a good indication of just how aggressive Bet365 wants to be in Arizona. Like you mentioned, Craig, they launched it in Indiana recently. And I mentioned with you last week or the week before that Indiana does not share promotional data. So we won't be able to get exact eyes on that promotional spend in Indiana, much like we will in Arizona. We've seen them spend rather heavily in other markets. Ohio comes to mind. And it might work out well for them right now, right? They launched ahead of the Super Bowl, which is a big customer acquisition time on the sports betting calendar, as we know. So perhaps an opportunity to offer more in bonus bets, odds boost, free play, whatever you want to call it, perhaps an opportunity for them to offer something a bit unique or a little bit more than some of the more established players in that Arizona market. So we'll see. Again, like we touched on last week when Indiana opened up, it'll be interesting to see just how much they want to spend and where they might go from here. But they have made some decent strides over the last year or so into the U.S., backed by some pretty deep pockets when it comes to that promotional spend. So we'll see where that kind of takes them. One other interesting note coming out of Arizona, a bill was recently filed in the state legislature that, if it makes its way through and gets approved and signed into law, it would give Turf Paradise, the racetrack in Phoenix, the opportunity to have an online sports betting license. If you recall, towards the end of last year, they were talking about closing that track permanently, and then the owner got involved with the state legislature, and everybody kind of came to an arrangement where they would have live racing in 2024, which is happening currently. So perhaps this might be a little bit of a lifeline for Turf Paradise and Arizona horse racing. Remains to be seen just how much progress this bill makes, but one interesting additional note out of Arizona that I thought was worth mentioning here.
We have about a minute to go. Any thoughts on this allegation from Fanatics with the stealing of the information from DraftKings and commercial products and things of that nature? We only have a minute, Jim. I'm sorry.
Yeah, pretty explosive complaint filed by DraftKings. There's a story up on Legal Sports Report right now with comments from Fanatics in response to this. So I would just encourage everybody to head to the website and read about it there. But certainly eye-opening for sure.
Okay. We'll check it out over at LegalSportsReport.com. Thanks for coming on, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg.
We'll be right back.
Tyreek, the first meeting, still had 5 catches, and Amon-Ra St. Brown still went through his number receptions-wise as well. Ayuk is now checking into a bit of the do category here.
We're talking about a field goal or less. The last time we saw a number greater than 5 was way back in February of 2008. It was that Super Bowl between the Steelers and the Cardinals, Super Bowl 43.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Don't want any distractions. And Vinny, on the eve of these teams getting to Las Vegas, we got a distraction.
We know that there's some family issues, not only with his dad there, but his brother has had a lot of run-ins here that have not looked good for the quarterback. But again, he's a different guy. I think we've understood that.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that they're going to try to run Pacheco down San Francisco's throat, as much as McCaffrey's going to get the ball for San Francisco, I think both of them will play well.
I think if the Niners win this game, Scotty, I think McCaffrey is the guy. I think he has a monster game for the Niners to win that. I think it's going to have his fingerprints all over it if it does happen.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman Trophy,
the early line,
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
NewsWire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell
backup quarterbacks.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
I have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
in-game live,
just
prime time.
Yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the 4th inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
late
good betting.
night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid.
We did.
Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
week for Brady Kannon, who joins us now here on NewsWire, here on SportsGrid. Brady, you're going to see all over the SportsGrid network the rest of the week. Of course, Brady lives in Las Vegas. We are covering the big game in Las Vegas from every angle. We're at like a lot of different locations too. Mandalay Bay. I saw some stuff from BetMGM too. Brady's even at his own studio, I believe, in his house as well. And so, Brady, get ready, man, because a lot of appearances coming. A lot of paychecks coming your way. We've got to get all your opinions here. It's like you're the marquee man now, starting right now.
Well, the marquee city, right? The world comes to Las Vegas this week, and boy, it's exciting. Of course, we were just talking before the segment began. I've never actually been to Radio Row. I mean, I've been doing radio for God knows how long, and I've never been to a Super Bowl. Now, recently we've had a few in Arizona, nearby Arizona. SoFi Stadium, I believe, was a couple of years ago, but I've never really gone out to cover the event other than right here from here at home. And here it is now in our backyard. So quite exciting. And I'll be down there with Gabe Morency a little later this evening on Radio Row tomorrow. And then actually covering a celebrity golf tournament, a couple golf tournaments going on here in Las Vegas. In addition to everything else, we've got the SI tournament, the celebrity tournament out at TPC Las Vegas on Thursday. And then the Live Tour is out here at the Las Vegas Country Club, of course, Friday through Sunday. So quite a bit going on.
Definitely so. I'm going to give you the hot tip, okay? So as somebody who's been to too many Radio Rows to count, and you're going tomorrow, that's fine. That's good, okay? But make sure it's sometime Thursday afternoon is the peak Radio Row time. That's it. It's Thursday, mid to late afternoon is when you get like the big stars, like whoever the biggest is that's going to come, or they're going to be there then. That's yes, tomorrow's okay. Don't get me wrong, but it is Thursday. And Friday, by the way, not the same as the other days. It's a little bit better than Monday, but not as good as Wednesday and Thursday. Okay, so that's my hot tip for the day. All right, as if it matters. All right, let's go to the Super Bowl. Okay, the 49ers back up to 2.5 against the Chiefs. Is where it opened. Went down, came back up. Total is 47.5. That's where we stand right now. Anybody who I bring on the show is taking Kansas City. I don't hear a lot of people taking San Francisco, so that's sort of where it is. Public money coming in on the Chiefs, but the line is not moving. In fact, the line went back up to -2.5. So I'm curious, because are you still like doing, here's where my power ratings are and here's what it says? There's got to be at this point like something that's convinced you, Brady. I very much value your opinion here, but there's something that what is going to convince you to have a position on a team in this game? Or are you going to be like me, where I just have no position on the side and I'm going to look for props and other things?
Well, I'm a little bit like you. I think this side is very tough to figure out. I'm going to have a play on it, though. As far as the total, I lean a little bit to the over. I looked at all of the average scoring by both of these two teams throughout the course of the season, and I kind of hate to be on the over because, from what I hear, that's where everybody else is. But, maybe it's the right side. And the number is a little bit low for a Super Bowl total. But the 49ers averaged over 29 points per game. The Chiefs averaged about 22.5 points per game. So, right there, you're at 51 or 52. And if you look at what they did against teams that made the playoffs, it's just about the same. So I think this total actually probably gets to not the line moving, but I think the game will fall probably right around 49 or 50, maybe 51. That's kind of what I penciled it out to be. So lean a little bit towards the over. And I'm glad to hear, Craig, that all of your guests are on Kansas City, because I like to be in the minority in these type of things. I like San Francisco on the money line. I don't necessarily want to lay the points with them. I may get into some alternate point spreads as well. I saw at the Westgate I could lay 3.5 with San Francisco, and I believe it was about plus 140 or so. Might have even been a little bit better price than that. Oftentimes the point spread doesn't come into play in all of these games. So it is wise to sometimes take a flyer with an alternate number. But I think my plan is, and I probably, I didn't get in early when the game opened, last Sunday night or Monday morning. So it's probably best to wait until the very end, and you're probably taking the worst of it if you get down and play somewhere, in the days between. But what I'll probably do is wait until Friday or Saturday when the public has had a chance to really get involved here in Las Vegas and hopefully drive that money line number down on San Francisco. You mentioned it, the general public, I believe, is hammering the Kansas City Chiefs. I just think they can't get over the fact that Patrick Mahomes is an underdog. And, quite frankly, I understand. It's hard to not envision this guy winning a football game. As bad, the Chiefs obviously weren't bad this year, but as atypical, I guess, the Chiefs were this year. The offense was not great. The defense was very, very good. So I think the public will come in and possibly drive this number down. I think the game will probably close 1.5 or 2, but I'm waiting to see if I can get that money line at minus 120 or lower, and that's when I'll probably jump in on San Francisco.
All right, fair enough. And again, you can catch Brady all over SportsGrid Network rest of the week. Make sure you check him out. He's in Vegas with everybody there. How convenient. All right, now let's get to golf here. So Wyndham Clark won at Pebble Beach. It counts, but, not everybody's feeling great about that unless you bet him, because naturally they were not able to finish this event. We got the Phoenix Open coming up this week, so I know your focus is going to be on that too, although I did see some prominent golfers pull out of that event this week as well. So, I mean, Brady, last week it was like this tournament's been upside down. All these underdogs are winning, and then we get this tournament last week, and we don't really get a full view as to what really is going on at the PGA Tour because they couldn't finish. The weather was really bad. So Phoenix Open is, again, one of the premier events on the tour. I assume that the weather will be better in Phoenix, and they'll finish this one.
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that. The weather is not all that dissimilar to what we experienced last week at Pebble Beach. You'd think, we could go to the desert and thaw out, warm up, dry off. But the wind is not supposed to be a factor like it was severely at Pebble Beach. You're looking at winds, pretty much right around 10 miles an hour or less in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. But they are expecting rain today all the way through Saturday. And I don't think it'll be as treacherous as it was along the Monterey Peninsula, but it is a factor. Typically, these greens at TPC Scottsdale run firm and fast. But I think with the moisture expected in the area for the next 4 or 5 days or so, it's going to soften up that golf course and soften up these greens probably a bit. This is probably, if it isn't the most, it is certainly one of the most pronounced examples of ball striking events on tour. It is, look at Scottie Scheffler. We know his ball striking, what it's been the past couple of seasons. And of course, he's won this tournament twice in a row. So this is really a ball strikers event. I also like to look at par 4 scoring. It's a par 71, so you've got 11 par 4s on this course. The par 5s are very gettable. There's some par 3s out here where you can make a couple birdies, but I really believe the tournament can be won or lost on the par 4s. And sure enough, the past couple of seasons when Scottie has won this tournament, he's ranked number 1 in the field in par 4 scoring. So ball striking and par 4 performance are a couple of real big areas. And Craig, it's also a tournament where course history means a lot. We see guys that typically play well here do so year after year. Scheffler's a perfect example, trying to make it 3 in a row. Hideki Matsuyama's won twice. Brooks Koepka's won twice. Ricky Fowler, Daniel Berger. There's a lot of guys here that just play well at this golf course year after year.
Yeah, I think seeing Scheffler at plus 450 here as the favorite is super rare. It takes me back to Rahm last year being 5-1. 6-1, and also correct me if I'm wrong about this tournament, but they do play Sunday, right? Don't they play Sunday morning and wrap, or does this end Saturday? I don't recall.
No, this is a full Thursday through Sunday. You're probably thinking of Torrey Pines when we had the championship games in the NFL, and they want to kind of get out of the way of that and not compete for viewership. So they go Wednesday through Saturday, which I think is great. But at the same time, I think this is great where we get a little appetizer before the Super Bowl begins on Sunday. I remember it was, in fact, maybe this is a good omen. The last time that the Chiefs played the 49ers in the Super Bowl, I had Webb Simpson in Phoenix that year, and he went on to win in a playoff over Tony Finau. So hopefully history repeats itself, and I pick up a winner before all the betting on the Super Bowl even begins. But, Craig, I did land on Scotty Scheffler, and this would be a polar opposite of the trend we've seen on the PGA Tour so far this year with all these long shots cashing. Obviously, Scheffler, the shortest shot on the board. I played him at 5-1, and we've seen him dip below that this morning. Of course, Victor Hovland and Xander Schauffele, a couple of the biggest threats to Scheffler not defending that two-time title, have pulled out of this field. So that makes this even more so a tournament for Scotty not to lose, in my opinion. I mean, if you look at his number, he's at 5-1. And then after that, Justin Thomas has kind of gone up to more like 11 or 12. Spieth is around 20. I believe Homa's around 18. Justin Thomas around 16. So there's a pretty big split between Scotty and the next best guys in this tournament. So I actually went with the favorite to make it 3 in a row here. And then I went a little further down the board from that. I took Matthew Fitzpatrick at 35-1, which is a pretty nice price considering this guy is ranked 9th in the world. And he was priced similarly last week at a signature event at Pebble Beach and was tied for 10th before we went into Saturday and the weather started to get pretty squirrely. So, and Fitzpatrick has a good history here. Another one of my correlated courses. I think there's a real strong connection between success in Phoenix and success at the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill, where Scheffler has also won. Fitzpatrick has also finished well at Bay Hill. And then I went to Adam Hadwin, actually a couple Canadians. Adam Hadwin at 50-1, just seems to have a real affinity for desert golf, plays well in La Quinta, plays well here in Las Vegas, and has played well in Phoenix. And then finally, Corey Connors, who really is the epitome of a ball striker. He's not a great putter, but with the rain I mentioned and the softer greens potentially, that could even things out, could could kind of mitigate his putting woes. We know he is a good ball striker. He's never missed a cut here in Phoenix. So those were my 4 outrights. I also played him for a top 20 finish.
All right, fair enough. Well, listen, Brady, are you going to be on with me again this week? You're done with me, right, for this week? So it's just you and me texting back and forth?
I am so done with you, Craig.
All right. Are we sure we can't get Brady back
again.
this week?
Please,
all right,
let's talk some prop bets. We've got an entire segment on prop bets, right?
I would love. Listen, you got to talk to Mikey Cohen. He's in charge over here.
He's the boss.
He's the man. Got to work it out with him. Check is in the mail. Thanks, Brady, for coming on. Really appreciate it.
You bet, my friend.
All right, Brady Kannon, unbelievable job. Brady always does on the show. I don't. How can I get to know as much as that guy? That's got to be my goal at some point. Okay, baseball news. Clayton Kershaw back with the Los Angeles Dodgers for the upcoming 2024 season, 1-year deal. I'll tell you more about that next.
Tyreek, the first meeting, still had 5 catches, and Amon-Ra St. Brown still went through his number receptions-wise as well. Ayuk is now checking into a bit of the do category here.
We're talking about a field goal or less. The last time we saw a number greater than 5 was way back in February of 2008. It was that Super Bowl between the Steelers and the Cardinals, Super Bowl 43.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect 6th man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Don't want any distractions. And Vinny, on the eve of these teams getting to Las Vegas, we got a distraction.
We know that there's some family issues, not only with his dad there, but his brother has had a lot of run-ins here that have not looked good for the quarterback. But again, he's a different guy. I think we've understood that.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that they're going to try to run Pacheco down San Francisco's throat, as much as McCaffrey's going to get the ball for San Francisco, I think both of them will play well.
I think if the Niners win this game, Scotty, I think McCaffrey is the guy. I think he has a monster game for the Niners to win that. I think it's going to have his fingerprints all over it if it does happen.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman
The early line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
NewsWire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell
backup quarterbacks.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
I have
decisions.
no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime
took 'em
time.
yard for a grand slam.
In the bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid.
You
for
did.
information. Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Clayton Kershaw is back with the Los Angeles Dodgers. I said it was a one-year deal. That was my assumption. I'm not sure if it's more than that. I don't think it will be. That'll be my prediction. I have no money details. This is coming from virtually everybody who's covering the Dodgers and also the national reporters as well. By the way, Kershaw's going to be out for the beginning of the season. So whatever deal he has probably will not include April, maybe into May as well. Okay, look, this is the risk in sports. When you go to a sporting event, a lot of people in Hong Kong paid to go see Leo Messi play. And unfortunately, Leo Messi did not play in the event that he was scheduled to play in. 40,000 fans, very upset. They paid to see him play. And he said that he was very, upset that he couldn't play. He wanted to participate when his team travels far. Unfortunately, a lot of people are demanding refunds. And there's another match coming up too. He expressed hope that he could play, but may not play. Folks, I got to tell you, you no longer can make assumptions in any sport when you buy a ticket that your team or the specific player on the team is going to play. You just can't. You just don't know. That's just the nature of what we live in sports. The greatest example of that, by the way, is coming up for the next month and a half. You may think I'm crazy, but it is spring training. I see this all the time in Florida and in Arizona. If you are a Dodgers fan or you are a Yankees fan and the Dodgers are traveling somewhere in Arizona or the Yankees are traveling, people buy the tickets to go see that team because they're coming nearby. And then none of the players actually play in the game. And here you did, you spent $100 or $200 on a spring training ticket. Your favorite players didn't play. You want to see LeBron James. He goes to the East Coast. You paid $100 for an NBA ticket. He didn't end up playing in the game. Folks, you got to learn your lesson at some point. It's nice to think that you could potentially see your favorite stars. It doesn't always happen. Just keep this in mind in the future. Just public service announcement. Thanks, of course, to Frank and Matt on the back end of the show. Thanks to Michael, our producer. Also, thanks to Brady Kannon for coming on the program, Jim Gazzale and Gilbert McGregor. I'm Craig Mish. This has been NewsWire. Pharrell is live in Las Vegas at 3 o'clock Eastern today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.